Welcome to the Good Side Podcast, a platform to meet the real change makers and learn about innovative models for sustainable development. Solidaridad is a civil society organization which strives to raise a robust global farming community by bringing innovative farming and supply chain solutions along with improving productivity and ensuring sustainability. Solidaridad partners with businesses, business associations, government departments, NGOs, and smallholder associations to deliver structural change at a scale that fosters a constructive impact on both people and our planet. In today's episode, we have Dr. Shatadru to tell us more about Solidaridad. Welcome to the Good Side Podcast, Dr. Shatadru. In 2018, Solidaridad Asia completed 10 years of its journey towards sustainability. We wish to know about major themes that the organization has covered in over a decade of its operations.
Greetings. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to share more about Solidaridad. I would begin by saying to all our partners, funders, and stakeholders a big thank you. It has been your support, sacrifices, and guidance over the years that has enabled us to grow from strength to strength, and for this we are boundlessly grateful. Within the last 12 years, we have grown from a fledgling network of only 2 employees and 1 small office in Delhi to over 500 plus professionals working from 32 offices in 9 countries of Asia. Solidaridad in the last decade has put all its energies to emerge as an innovative sustainability solution provider at scale. Innovation has been the driving force in whatever sustainability initiatives we developed and implemented. All the initiatives were solution-oriented that aimed to solve a pressing sustainability challenge in the region. Solidaridad works on broadly 3 themes that includes power to the people, inclusivity, as we call it, respect for the planet, producing in balance with nature, and the third theme is fair share for everyone in the chain, that is the prosperity. So between inclusivity, prosperity, and producing in balance with nature, we call it as our sustainability definitions. Further, we divide them into 4 themes or sub-themes. We call it good farming practices, inclusive supply chains, supportive policy environment, and stimulating demand for sustainable products in the markets, particularly in Asia. Let me start by talking about the issue of good farming practices. Now, it is estimated, as you know, 87% of the world's 500 million small farms who are less than 2 hectares are in Asia. But these smallholder farmers and rural workers are not doing well economically. It is one of the key reasons why we see Asian farmers remain stuck in poverty and underinvest in their farms. Sometimes they are even forced to adopt unsustainable practices, and it also leads to young people who are unwilling to do farming anymore and are migrating to big cities, creating developmental challenges there. So Solidaridad brings more than 500 top scientists, agronomists, and business brains locally and uses in-house developed digital systems to improve agricultural practices. Now, how do we do that? For example, to prevent degradation of soils, we support farmers transitioning towards more resource-efficient, circular, and regenerative production methods. We protect the water quality which is used in the farm. We even support reusing of wastewater for agriculture, something a very crucial issue in a country like India. We minimize the release of hazardous chemicals from big industries or stop leaching of agrochemicals into the water bodies in agriculture. We look at clean air as a major theme where we organize learning and exchange on how to reduce harmful emissions, disposals, and toxins in production. In this process, so far we have supported more than 1 million farmers in Asia and almost same number of workers in the last decade. Now, this brings us to the second aspect of our intervention, that is inclusive supply chains. Improving productivity and quality at the farm without inclusive supply chain is of no use. In spite of high productivity, the smallholder farmers are unable to earn living income because of significant imbalance between the risk of agriculture shouldered by the farmers and then their power to shape their own market participation. This imbalance is not accidental, but it is reinforced by structural barriers at the level of individual supply chains, commodity sectors, and national public policy agendas.
We would like to know about your key interventions and focus areas in India.
About our focus areas in India, I could go on for a very long time about several activities we do here is one of the biggest regions in our network. But let me focus on three areas which may be of interest to your listeners. Our focus is on to support farmers to get out of what we call a trap of blindly going for more yields and assist them to transition towards regenerative agriculture. When we say regenerative agriculture, it means that we focus on topsoil regeneration, increase biodiversity, improve water cycle, enhance ecosystem services, support biosequestration, increase resilience to climate change, and strengthen the health and vitality of farm soil. But the question is, why do we think this way? This is important for us to explain. In the last decade, a new concept, many of you might have noted, emerged called Feeding the Future 10 Billion Population, supported by an ecosystem of NGOs, large food corporations, chemical and seed companies, and agri-tech providers. It focused singularly on yield increase for all crops using intensive chemical agriculture, often using genetically modified crops. This approach debunked organic farming and regenerative farming as an unscientific and unrealistic concept, and they claimed it would lead to requirement of more forest land to grow food because yields will come down if we use such kind of an approach. Unfortunately, crop intensification using this practices of high chemical use did not spare the land for nature in Asia and instead expanded massively for production of cheaper food. This approach actually even suited our community of NGOs very well. We could demonstrate the immediate impact of the project, showing yield increase is equal to the rise in income is equal to financial sustainability of the project. But in reality, such farming practices severely affected the ecology. On the other hand, oversupply has brought down the prices, making small-scale farming almost unviable. Policy, science, and consumer expectations and farmer practices in Asia all point to the same paradigm: optimization, not productivity, for land, animals, and energy. Taking on this challenge, there is a need to reset and take ecology and the carrying capacity as a starting point. This means a paradigm shift towards regenerative agriculture, and that is what we are focusing on as one of the major themes in India. Solidaridad in India is also most active in the space of pollution management. Pollution, as many of us will know, currently poses one of the most significant public health and human rights challenges, which disproportionately affects the poor and the vulnerable. Exposure to air, soil, and water pollution kills more people globally than the child and maternal malnourishment. The solution Solidaridad Asia has tried out over the last few decades is to address the problem at source. It would essentially involve three major methodologies: develop multi-stakeholder partnership for joint action, to bring in economically feasible technical solutions from Europe, which has been successfully addressed in those countries. 3. Develop business cases through programs like Waste to Wealth and replacing polluting products like plastics to more environmentally friendly products. And lastly, we also build capacity of the workers and farmers to use these solutions. Our work in India has been recognized by the Government of India's different departments. We are an official partner of National Mission on Clean Ganga, different state pollution control boards, and research institutions within the country. And that, let me talk about the third focus area in India, and this is about creating nutrition security for the country. Solidaridad is inspired by the issue of the concept promoted by noted economist C.K. Prahalad and his colleague Stuart L. Hart, uh, where they talked about, they argued that there is a market of 4 billion poor people who are who could be tapped in for profit models, and the poor themselves had to partner in this process of moving out of poverty. This challenged many long held assumptions about the role of both government and businesses in addressing poverty. Most businesses, like Unilever, since then have very good insight and created cost structures to reach poor consumers. But now we in Solidaridad want to replicate the model for aspirational products to aspirational nutrition, so that the poor people starts looking at nutritious food as an aspirational or as aspirational as junk food they savor today. Towards this direction, our objective would be to democratize nutrition through supporting businesses to introduce affordable but aspirational nutritional product at the bottom of the pyramid. Similarly, Solidaridad Asia would also work with health food companies and support them to introduce herbal products at the bottom of the pyramid to diversify available health options. In the post-COVID world scenario, both these aspects would be very critical. So this is kind of roughly the three major themes in which we are focusing on India.
COVID 19 wreaked havoc across the globe. The hardest hit were low income and vulnerable communities. During the trying times of COVID, in what ways did you reach out to such vulnerable sections?
Thank you for asking this very pertinent question on COVID 19. Indeed, COVID 19 has caused the world a havoc. As countries battled its spread, baffled by mammoth, unpredictable nature of the pandemic, people died in droves worldwide. In rural parts of Asia with little access to basic livelihood requisites, during the long lockdowns, and it affected the smallholders and daily wage workers in various ways. Particularly, they had double crisis of income and health uncertainty. Living hands to mouth, these vulnerable communities had neither the access to adequate protective gear nor the luxury of maintaining social distancing. They were really disproportionately affected during this crisis. Recognizing this present crisis, Solidaridad engaged in various relief and awareness mechanisms throughout last 2 years to abate the spread of COVID-19 in rural communities. We work closely with partners and local authorities. Solidaridad extended support to landless farmers, workers, and vulnerable communities with like basic livelihood requisites like supply of dry ration kits. We provided personal protective equipments, preventive care provisions such as masks, gloves, soaps, and sanitizers to several farmers, community workers, healthcare volunteers across different parts of rural area of India and across Asia. We tried to do our bit. Obviously, we were augmenting what the state was already doing there. But on the work front, the COVID-19 lockdown was a kind of a game changer for us in the way we engage with our training programs and the way we engage with the farmers and workers. We saw that because of increased dependency on internet and communication technology, mobile applications, social media, the life we used to live is changing, the work we used to do is changing, and therefore, this is something we took up because most of these technologies were always there, but now people were forced to use it in such a way that it kind of replicated to a large extent their old way of living life. We saw, I can give you some very interesting figures. Like in India, we have seen almost 100% increase in the rural data consumption during the period of lockdown, the first lockdown, and in just 40 days started consuming more data than urban areas. So, new ways of digitally linking smallholder farmers with the consumers were also successful in many countries. One of the major problems our smallholders faced was their supply chain got majorly disrupted. They were unable to sell their products, and that's where usage of digital mechanisms to sell their products directly to the producers, to the consumers, came very handy, and it kind of awakened us to new possibilities while trying to reduce the difficulties felt by the producers in our work. So yeah, it was a very challenging moment for us. It still continues, but it has thrown up new opportunities of addressing the entire issue of training, transparency, market connect in a completely new and different way. And that's how we have been doing it in across Asia.
We would be interested in knowing about your strategies and perspective on how Solidaridad Asia is building and sustaining successful partnerships in order to amplify its impact.
Partnership is an interesting concept. When I joined the NGO sector almost 2.5 decades back, partnerships for NGOs essentially meant partnering to seek funds or access to work from private sector or government. However, we have come a long way from that narrow purpose of partnership. True partnerships are about nowadays, we call it as shared agendas as well as combined resources, risks, and rewards. Each broad sector has different competencies, aspirations, and styles of behavior, which could be combined to achieve a common vision. Let me say, business, for example, plays a key role in investment and trade through the creation of goods and services, profit maximization for its investors, employment opportunities, and economic growth. The rule of law is upheld by the public sector, which creates framework for economic, political, and social rights and provides regulation and mechanisms for these, while civil society focuses on social development and the creation of opportunities for individual growth with the provision of support and services for those excluded from the mainstream. So this is how broadly I see that the partnerships are emerging in this present decade or over the last decade. Solidaridad partners with all country governments where we work and with most leading businesses, academic institutions, research agencies, and most importantly, leading industry associations and producer associations. The partnership with the producer associations is very critical for us because it gives us the mandate to do whatever we are doing on behalf of the farmers. So the question, of course, to me is why Solidaridad Asia is increasingly becoming a preferred partner. I'm often asked this question, what are we doing differently? What is the mantra that worked for us at a time which was, besotted with recession, financial turmoil, total weakening of CSO movements in Asia? Well, honestly, I'm not very sure, but I believe we use three concepts very productively. It's much easier for me to analyze them retrospectively after a decade, but probably it happened very, on its own. The first concept is the power of irrationality. We are living in an age when everything is predictable and made into a rational choice through digital technology. Such situation has made rationality into a less of a force and made irrationality into a unique human proposition. Now let me explain this further. The famous Nobel laureate from Israel in behavioral economics, Dr. Daniel Kahneman, says that if you rationally weighed the odds of success, you would never start a business. Thank goodness for irrationality. It is about thinking big, because here is the funny thing. When you shoot higher, you actually encounter less competition along the way, not more. In many ways, it is actually easier to shoot for the stars than it is to shoot for the realistic goals. So, we actually focused on really large, big targets which were much beyond our weight in the beginning, and that was appreciated by the many partners from government and the private sector. The second concept we see as was effective for us was emotion. Now, this is something beyond the realm of artificial intelligence, at least it is not there yet. Human beings radiate their emotions and thoughts. It's involuntary. We do it whether we want it or not. Most people have this, conflicting beliefs. On the one hand, they like to say, yes, I can do it. But on the other, they are saying, yeah, I'm not so sure. They simultaneously have the beliefs that point in opposite directions. This happens with the organizations also. But sometimes the entire organization start looking at one direction. And you know what I call that? I call it conviction. A group of people within an organization with congruent beliefs will have conviction. And by thinking more positive thoughts and aligning your internal beliefs, you will automatically radiate more positive energy, and people around you will notice. These issues are not given much weightage in the NGO thinking of the ways, but it has come very handy. It is visible everywhere. Look anywhere. The artist who sings with passion climbs up the chart. The politician who speaks with passion get more votes. The business who operate with passion dominate their industry. I think something similar happened with Solidaridad in Asia. The stakeholders in India or Indonesia were forced to notice after a persistent approach and because of our conviction. So I would say emotion and the passion was the second block which actually worked in our favor. And the third and the last element was values. It's very obvious, of course, on the values, but there are many examples where a CSO or a company preach one value and practice another. Organizational values are the core belief that an organization structure itself around. Whether it is how to treat partners or other employees or their own employees, or what they strive for when they work there, kind of creates a kind of a value system within an organization. So, Solidaridad, I have tried to build around a system where we stood by our values even at the face of financial losses. The stakeholders in the mid to long term, I have seen always, initially you may lose some of the contracts, you may lose partnerships, but in the long term, it rewards those organizations which work with such strong values and does not succumb to the lure of very quick wins. So I think these three factors, I would say, has worked very well for us when it comes to the partnership and building long-term strong partnership with different stakeholders, which has stood the test of the time for us.
How do you see the future of the social sector in developing nations like India?
About the future of social sector in India, I think as the nation attempts to recuperate from the pandemic's dire social economic effects, I think the NGOs or civil society organizations, I believe they will start playing a very critical role again. I think there has been a lot of debate about whether the NGO sector is becoming effective or ineffective in the last decade, but I see positively about their role. They will continue to use capabilities for mobilization and community engagement in the post-COVID world. NGO social projects and multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral initiatives of concerned actors will be revived to ensure the welfare of underserved societies, underserved sections of societies. That's what I feel. And as increasingly many of the social and other activities are taken over by the private sector in the market-driven system of development, NGOs are expected to play the role of a countervailing force to this expanding influence of markets and reducing involvement of the states. So how would they engage? Maybe I can talk from the space from where I operate in the sustainability space. which is a market-driven sustainability space, we see the NGOs will engage with the markets in four forms. First, it will create anti-business campaigns highlighting negative impacts of the society. These NGOs will be more like watchdogs who would be focused on addressing issues of negative impacts of the of the businesses, of the governments, and they will create information and awareness within the society of what is wrong, what is going or what needs to be done. So these NGOs will work outside the frame and raise the problems associated with a business actor or a government actor. But there are a significant chunk of NGOs will also work with businesses, creating win-win partnership for business and communities and make their practices more sustainable. Here, these NGOs will collaborate with businesses and jointly find win-win solutions, which is good for business, good for society, and good for the environment. Such partnerships are increasingly becoming the hallmark of our partnership within India. We see this kind of partnerships in sustainability partnerships, CSR partnerships in India. The third variety of partnership will be even more interesting. The third variety of work will be when NGOs will promote new products or services that have strong social or environmental credentials. Many small businesses which can do great deal of good for society and environment often are not in a position to compete in the marketplace without proper handholding and support from civil society actors. These businesses face an unfair competition from big industries who prefer to go in business as usual mode. Bringing these new products and services into the mainstream would be one of the major role of NGOs, because that will benefit both the businesses and the society and the environment in a tremendous way. We have seen some examples of that also coming up, where new innovative ideas are brought together by a collaboration between a micro, small enterprises and NGOs working together. And I think lastly, NGOs will have to play a very strong role where they will act as a neutral platform, convening different actors from society or from a particular sector to develop consensus on sustainable development. It is not always possible for one interest group or the other to play that role. Only the civil society, which comes in as a neutral facilitator with a empathy towards the weakest link in the supply chain, are in a good position to convene such stakeholder dialogue. And in our experience, we have seen this kind of leads to very efficient policy development or policy implementation. So within these four realms, we see that particularly in the sustainability domain, the NGOs will have a role to play. But having said so, and I don't want to go very deep into it, but it's because a lot of it has been written by many of my colleague NGO leaders in India. But just it will be sufficient to say that functioning of running an NGO in India is becoming increasingly difficult. The new laws for businesses or to attract FDIs are now much easier than actually to bring in funds for NGOs or to utilize funds for NGOs with various provisions and changes in the laws. I hope the government of India and other stakeholders will support the NGOs with the same level playing field as the businesses gets, to make the work of the social development function in a productive and creative way.
Mm. Thank you so much for taking out time and being a part of the Good Side podcast. If you are part of any development journey and wish to engage with us, please email us at contact thegoodsite.com or WhatsApp on 963 101 4408.